Hello, this is Lance King. I am your host today. We're going to be interviewing Keith Weaver. He is the owner of Carepoint. And we're going to be talking today about how Carepoint is helping healthcare providers. So I think this could be a real valuable thing to tune in. Specifically, wanting to get into some of his background, and then we're going to identify some of the problems that people experience before they contact a company like Carepoint, some of the alternatives of what people do before they feel like it's time to reach out, and then get into his solution and how it can really benefit you. Now, we have recently partnered up with Carepoint and are doing some fun things with them that will benefit you. And so this is something that you'll certainly want to pay attention to if you're interested in some of their services. And the first thing we're going to do is introduce Keith by just going through his background, how he got into Carepoint, and we'll go from there. So hi, Keith.
Hello, how are you this afternoon? So, yeah, I don't know what you want me to explain at first, but just again, Carepoint is a group purchasing organization, and personally, my background, I owned home health and hospice, had some other businesses, and was familiar with group purchasing, but always looking for ways to cut costs so that we could keep more of our profits and how to do that. About 5-6 years ago, I actually sold some of the companies that I had and was looking for another company to get involved in. And that's when I came across Carepoint. Another little portion of my background is I was also an attorney, and so contract negotiation and contracts were very well known to me. And so when I came across the opportunity to work with Carepoint and become an owner, it was a great blend of working with the medical field, working with the different clinics, doctors, nursing homes, and contract management as we try to put contracts together to help our members save money. And so those are some of the ways that I got into Carepoint. And so for the last 4 years, it's been a great ride and been enjoying helping members. The company has actually been around since 2000, so it's been around about 16 years, but my involvement's been in the last 4 to 5 years.
Okay. So with your involvement, just because there are a lot of doctors and people that are associates that are either recently joining a practice or recently started a practice, what were some of the pain points for you in getting started in this entrepreneurial venture?
So, more and more with Medicare, with different insurance, they're cutting back what they're reimbursing doctors. Mm-hmm. It's making it harder. For a long time in the medical field, profits were pretty abundant. More and more people are cutting back. They're having to look at cutting salaries or cutting other things. And so if there's ways that we can save money and help our bottom line, the better that is for the employees, for the doctor, for everybody involved with the medical practice. And so, being able to do that is one of the big pain points, is to be able to keep more of their profits. Another thing that is really big is that it just takes such a long time. I mean, if you ever thought about when was the last time you shopped for a car? How long did you shop for a car?
Right.
There's various cars, there's various dealers. How do you find the best deal? How do you find what you want? All of those different things take time. Mm-hmm. And if you're looking at various vendors in a medical practice, to look at each of those vendors and try to vet them out and see what's the best deal, that takes time. So with Carepoint, we're able to go out there and work with all of our members and find vetted vendors that, one, will offer a discount to our members, and two, that come highly recommended, that work with us and are motivated to provide great services because they're working with the whole of the members. So it saves the member not only money, but it also saves them time of having to go out and compare 5 or 6 different possible vendors that they could use, what their offering is, what's the best deal they can negotiate with a given vendor. all of those pain issues have been taken out, so that we hand it to them with some pre-negotiated rates, and then it's a lot easier for them to look at, make a decision, and get going on it.
Okay, so what I'm gathering is that a real pain point for a lot of these healthcare practices is finding a company that they can trust. I'm also hearing that certainly price is a big thing that they're looking at, being that there are several vendors that a lot of healthcare practices will have to, they'll have to incorporate their services.
Right.
And so you vet the process for them. You have a group, kind of a group rate for them, so that it helps discount it. Now, what type of so if somebody was to find Carepoint and start utilizing it, talk a little bit about the platform and how the platform is developed when somebody actually determines that they want to utilize to Carepoint or look into Carepoint's vendors.
So the process of joining Carepoint is pretty easy. There's just a short application that goes through the basic demographic information and then what kind of practice that you have, so that we can kind of understand what contracts. But again, it's pretty we do all the service for people. So when they become a member, we actually assign them a case manager, and the case manager calls them up, and we'll actually go through what vendors they're using, what kind of products they're buying, and we'll find the best contracts for them. So they don't have to, some of the members, when they first come on, they'll be like, oh, well, I just want to go to a website and look. Well, to look through 2,000 contracts, that's a waste of their time.
Yeah.
If our case manager can say, oh, you're looking for, for example, a healthcare solutions compliance type thing, rather than them looking through all the contracts, we can say, we have a contract with this company, these are the benefits, this is the price rate, and it saves them the time. So having a case manager is a huge benefit, where they can work with that individual one-on-one. The other thing that a case manager will do is do researches. So for example, we just had a clinic recently called up, they wanted to buy a new ultrasound machine. They looked up, they found the one that they wanted, or one of three, and it was going to be about $57,000.
Wow.
So they called up the case manager. The case manager looked through our contract, talked to some of our vendors, and found that they actually could get it for about 50% off. And so the clinic actually ended up buying two of them, paid $63,000 for two of them, over $57,000 for one, because there was such a good deal that
Wow.
the two of the doctors decided they wanted a new machine, so they bought two of them.
Okay.
So, that research, again, would be something that the case manager would do to save them time, so that they wouldn't have to do that on their own.
Will you walk us through how you talk about how people are vetted? Will you walk us through this vetting process, why it's important, and just help us understand a little bit more about what goes into that?
Well, as you can imagine, there are other group purchasing organizations out there, and part of what I think people are looking at from a group purchasing organization is, one, they're looking for good quality deals. They want to know that if they're going with a vendor, that it's someone that's going to provide good pricing. But they're also looking for that value, not necessarily the cheapest, but they're looking for a combination of quality and best pricing.
Yeah.
And so our reputation really hangs on the type of contracts that we have. And so, without mentioning names, in the past we have had contracts where the vendor was really good, and then all of a sudden we started having complaints from our member after a 4 or 5 year period. And we had to go back. It was a national contract, national company. We went back to them and complained to them and talked to them, went up the ranks to talk to the individuals, and we couldn't get the solution that we wanted. So we discharged them as a vendor, and we went out and negotiated with another vendor in that arena and started working with them. Because again, the quality of the service, the quality of that contract is our reputation.
Okay.
So we're going to make sure that they're quality vendors and that they work well with our members. And if not, they're not going to keep those contracts.
So is there a process that you go through, Keith, on a regular basis to determine whether certain vendors are working out, such as, if there's a vendor that's been with you for, 5 years, do you revisit how things are going with that vendor once a year? What exactly are some of the determinants that help you decide whether or not to keep a vendor over time?
So first off, our contracts are typically either a 3-year or a 1-year type contract, depending on the nature of the vendor and what area they're in.
Okay.
So we're reviewing those contracts when they become renewal time to see if that's a contract that we still want to renew with that vendor. But more importantly, we are member driven. So our members dictate to us, which contracts they're using, which ones they want to use, which vendors are good, and we rely heavily on member feedback. So, let's say we don't have a contract for carpet cleaning. If we have vendors come to us and say, hey, we really want a contracted vendor for carpet cleaning that we can work with and, get better pricing and have a good quality vendor, then that's going to dictate to us that this is a contract we need to go out and look for and find a good deal on and find a good vendor that can be trusted.
Okay.
So we are entirely member driven, and we love member feedback. We get feedback from them as they talk to the account manager. We get feedback from them through emails, through various ways, and then we take that, and that's what directs our company.
Okay. Well, it definitely sounds like the individuals that come on as vendors really are in a very good position where every year you said every year you're,
Right.
you're determining whether or not they want to stay, and we've recently partnered up as a vendor. So, and I know the process. It took us a few months before we determined that this was going to make sense and be a value for your customers. Now, I think probably some of you out there may be saying, well, you're in Utah. Are these vendors only in Utah? And if they're not in Utah, how do we know if there are any of the vendors who will service their practice in this area? Will you talk to that question?
So, yeah, about 90% of our contracts are national contracts with companies like 3M, McKesson, Henry Schein, Covidian, companies that are well known, well established, and nationwide. We do have contracts, let's say going back to the example of, say, carpet cleaning. You're probably not going to find a national company that does carpet cleaning nationwide.
Right.
So we do have some contracts that are more regional, that will find a company that works in a 3 or 4 state radius.
Okay.
And we'll do a contract with them.
Uh-huh.
And then, we'll find a vendor similar in a different area and do a regional contract. So we do have some regional contracts throughout the United States for those type of services or products that may not be, a national company type product.
I see.
But again, that's about 10% of our contracts. The majority of our contracts are with national companies that, will service you pretty much anywhere you are, whether you're urban or even rural, metropolitan areas, wherever it might be.
Okay. So another thing. So a lot of these vendors, you've mentioned there's some pretty big names. So with these vendors that are bigger types of companies, a lot of these companies will have a bunch of sub products. Are you saying that when someone comes to your site, are they just seeing a McKesson, for example? And if they're seeing McKesson, are you going through all their products, or are they just seeing a category and 1 or 2 products? Do you mind talking to that question in terms of, okay, I go to the site, how much of these companies is actually being listed?
So our website really is not that extensive, and the reason is again, we're focused on customer service. So we want you to call the case manager and not just rely on a website, because one, contracts are changing all the time, and sometimes prices are, those kind of things. But if you call our case manager, they will actually go through and do a cost study. And so, for example, a new doctor's office may come on, and maybe from, you mentioned, say, McKesson, they might be buying 150 products from McKesson.
Right.
So we'll go through and take that line item by line item and do a cost comparison for each item that they're buying and see, can we save them money on this item, and sit down and do a report with them. But they can also, they don't buy through us directly, they buy through the vendor. So
Sure.
if they're going to McKesson and they're logging in and they have our contracted rates, it will say, that it's a contracted item.
I see.
So they can go through and look at the catalog on McKesson, and they can see, these 5 items are contracted.
Okay.
And so they know right there while they're on the website that they're getting contracted pricing versus not. If for some reason they don't see, that an item's contracted, again, they can call us and say, should this be a contracted item, or is this an item that's kind of a outlier that we don't have a contract for? And so again, they can do that, but really having that case manager to do all of that for you, that's an invaluable service.
Right.
So that's what we really focus on, is that customer service.
Now, is that case manager contacting them periodically to determine whether or not there are more services that could be required, or?
Yes, so they're contacting them, trying via phone, but in the medical field, that's hard to do.
That is hard.
And so a lot of it's through email, periodic emails, offering services, letting them know of updates, things like that might be going on with the different contracts.
Okay. Something that may be brought up is, do you focus more on specific types of medical practices, or how does that work exactly?
So the nature of our contracts are such that we work with pretty much any type of medical company, whether it's a surgical center, a facility, like a nursing home, or a clinic. But so for example, we have several members that are maybe eye doctors or dentists or and we may not have as many contracts for their specialty type things, where, if you're a pediatrician and orthopedic doctor, family practitioner, or, any of those, our contracts cover, typically 80 to 90% of what they're buying.
Oh, really?
Because we're pretty widespread.
That's nice.
But in some of those specialties, like an eye doctor or something, there's certain things that they're buying that we don't necessarily have contracts for everything, but we'll help them wherever we can.
So in the case that you don't necessarily have a contract for somebody, do you have some sort of a network that where you've been referring these people out to other places? Do you try to be kind of a one-stop shop? Seems like that's kind of what I'm gathering, is that your aim is to be a one-stop shop with any services, any products or services that are needed in the healthcare profession. Am I wrong in saying that?
Well, we definitely want to be there for customer service, and not so much a one-stop shop, but we do want to be a trusted advisor, so that they come to us and they say, this is what I'm looking for. What can you do for us?
Okay.
And if we can't, we do have other affiliate vendor type things. There's even some co-ops that we'll work with that maybe are very specific to what they're purchasing. They don't have as many options, but for what their co-op is about, they have really good pricing because they're very specialized.
Okay.
And so we will work with different people like that. Again, we want to be there to help our members in any way we can.
Okay.
But, you can't be everything to everyone.
Right, exactly. One question that, just to go back to the fact that a lot of people in healthcare, a lot of people that the healthcare compliance solutions reaches out to, they are smaller practices, and they identify, many of them, with being entrepreneurs. And being that you are an entrepreneur, what would you say is the best advice that you've received in some of the sticky points of your business, where it's a little bit slower, you're not really sure perhaps if things are going to, you're not really sure how certain things are going to work out? What's some advice you'd give to entrepreneurs, generally speaking, that are trying to make it when it can be a little bit more difficult?
Well, that's a pretty good question, broad question. But so I guess one, as far as, every business has its ups and downs. But again, part of what we look at is what systems are in place, and do they have something systematic? Mm-hmm. Because if you do and you're working your system, then all you have to do is keep doing that, and you're going to see those ups come back at some point or another. Because of my background and my passion is working with the entrepreneurs and the small clinics, the small business people, we do have a newsletter that goes out monthly. Part of that newsletter is not only updates about our different contracts and things, but we also have articles that we like to focus on management, on different aspects of, HR. I think, we've talked in particular, Lance, about, changes in regulations and policy. We like to get those out to our members as well, because that all goes to the management of their company and how they run their company, whether it's compliance or whether it's just basic management of how can they be better managers, how can they run their business better.
Mm-hmm. So part of what I'm gathering, and I don't know for those of you that are listening if you've taken this away, but one thing I'm gathering as a takeaway is your services, these different vendors really are helping these practices to learn how to do more with less. I talk with people all the time that say that they are just scrambling to pick up all the pieces, and with all the demands on their shoulders, they sometimes wonder, what is my position anymore? And boy, I'm taking on so many responsibilities, and over time they start dragging. They lose the passion and the initial reason that they got into that particular practice. And so again, what I'm gathering is you're helping people to do more with less with these resources and automating a lot of systems.
Right, and trying to take some burden off their shoulders of, making their procurement, where they're getting their supplies, their services, making that part easier.
Okay.
Taking one thing off their shoulders. Because like you said, everybody you talk to, they're just bombarded by how many tasks are added to them daily, and their job descriptions are getting longer and longer all the time. Uh-huh. So if we can
not
take
much more pay either.
Well, that's true. Very true. So, it's an ongoing battle, if you will, to try to maintain that balance. But
right.
And we're obviously working in one small area, but is the area that we're working in. If we can take some of that burden off, that's what we want to do. Fantastic.
So, question that I have for the next 5 years: how is Carepoint growing? What are some initiatives that you've put in place? What are some of your goals? How are you growing in the next 5 years?
Our growth in the last year really has come from a lot of smaller clinics. We have really looked at, it's easy sometimes to want to get into the bigger clinics that have, say, 100 employees. But recently, we found that we can help the small clinics a lot, and it's just very enjoyable to help a 1 or 2 man clinic and see the benefit that you can give them. And so we found a lot of those that we're being able to help. Their expenses may not be much from a dollar amount, but their expenses are a lot from their overall budget and how much they have. And every little bit helps. And one, they're just a lot more appreciative because it means so much more to them. So
Exactly.
that's a huge area of growth for us.
Okay.
Is that smaller clinic, smaller even assisted livings or smaller nursing homes, those kind of things.
Well, I appreciate you answering these questions, and it really has been great to interview you. I just want to know how people can find you. Are you in social media channels? What's your website? How can people learn more and perhaps connect with one of these associates that you have that can then be a guide for them with these vendors?
Well, I'm old school. I'm not, I'm not a millennial and hip like you are. So we do have the website, and on the website there's email and phone number. And the easiest way is they can contact us through email or phone number, and then we'll have a case manager actually follow up with them and walk through the process, set up what needs to be set up if they want to do a cost study or anything like that.
Okay.
And they'll follow through with that.
Okay.
And that's what they do on a regular basis. So I like to think they do it really well.
Okay. Well, we're certainly grateful to Keith for being with us today. Grateful for the things that Carepoint is doing to make things a little bit more affordable, help people to do more with less. There's a book that I read recently that talks about a decision-making process. And in this decision-making process, his name's Rory Vaden, and he talks about how important it is when you're making decisions to first take a look at a decision that you have and to say, hey, is this something that I can eliminate? Well, if you can't eliminate it, is this something that I can delegate? If you can't delegate it, is this something I can automate? And if I can't automate it, is this something I can procrastinate and push that off to a later date? And I think what we're talking about here is, in having a vendor help you out, like healthcare compliance solutions or any of the vendors that any other vendors that are with Carepoint, all that's doing is it's actually promoting the use of your time to do the things that matter most in your profession, which is getting back to the patients. And so if this can help you get back to the patients, you may consider, again, go to carepointgp.com.
Correct.
We'll put that in the notes. And if you have any other questions, you're welcome to put any questions below, and we'll make sure those get to Keith. Well, my name is Lance King. I'm with Healthcare Compliance Solutions. Sure grateful that you tuned in with us, and hope that you continue to make it a great day. Thank you.